Friends, this morning, there's a new thing God is doing. Come on, there's a new thing in our family that God is doing. There's a new thing in our lives that God is doing. Oh, I said there's a new thing in this church that God is doing. There's a new thing even in this nation that God is doing. And He's calling us to behold. Now, after forgetting, He is not just calling you to a vague vacuum. He says, forget the former things and now look and see the things I'm doing. Now, I am a civil engineer by training. I hang around construction sites. And when you come to a construction site, when you enter, what greets you is a very ugly environment. Piles of excavated soils, hardcore stones that have been heaped there, scaffolds, mbao, dust, noise of excavating machines. That's what greets you. And it's not pleasing, it's not appealing to the eye. But if you keep on walking, if you keep on walking beyond the debris and the loose material and the dust and the stone and everything, you begin to get sight of a building, of a beautiful building that's coming up. You begin to see inside those excavations, there seems to be some nice columns that are coming up. There seems to be some walls that have been done very nicely. They are coming up. And it will take effort for you to go beyond the dust, to begin to see the new things that God is doing, to begin to see the new building that's springing up. Let me tell you, the new things that God does would call for an effort from us to consider them. That's why He's saying, see, behold, it's an action. Consider the new thing that I'm doing. Church, I am convicted this morning that God is ever in the business of doing good. And we have to allow ourselves to see Him for that. We have to allow ourselves to journey with Him in that debris, in that loose material, in that dust. We must allow ourselves to walk with Him and get sight of the things that He is doing. Number one, forget the former things. Number two, behold, I am doing a new thing. Let me tell you, when you behold and see the new things which God is doing, your faith would be stirred up. Explain to me how Bartimaeus is standing by the road, blind. He's never even seen the face of Jesus. He's never even seen the multitudes that are around Christ. He's perhaps in a desperate place. He's trusting God for a miracle. He's seated there, and then all of a sudden, he hears the commotion of a crowd. Look, he was limited by sight, yet his deliverance came from what he heard. There are some people who saw Christ and their deliverance came from the seeing. Him he could not see, but he could hear. That which he was left with, his hearing aid. What have you been left with? Because often that's where perhaps God will come from. And he says, what's going on? And they say to him, Jesus of Nazareth is passing. Say that again. Jesus of Nazareth is passing. Jesus! Have mercy on me! The crowd looked at him exactly the way you've looked at me. Thou son of David, please have mercy on me. And they are telling him, keep quiet. This is a dignified meeting. Hey, some decorum, please. We are a church of order. He says, shh, keep quiet. He said, okay, fine, I'll keep quiet. Jesus! Have mercy on me. Why? Because now, that was the last trip Jesus made. From that moment, a few hours later, he was going to be arrested in Gethsemane and die. If Bartimaeus missed that moment, that was it for him. Read your scripture. That was the last journey Jesus made working out miracles. After that, he was arrested in the garden. He was taken through the trial and he died. I do not know if Bartimaeus perceived that. I do not know if Bartimaeus knew. If I miss him now, I will never see him again. So I don't care. But Jesus, please, Son of David, have mercy. And Jesus said, who is that? Because when you perceive, when you look and see, when you behold, when you perceive, when your sense and awareness of the power of God around you is awakened, you will always catch the attention of Jesus. And he will look your way. He will look your way. And the same people that were telling him, shut up, are the same one that were given the instruction, bring him up. Bring him up. And they took the man and they said, what can I do for you? I need to see. And sight was restored. Because of a man who chose to behold. Something new is happening around me. Hey, there's a beautiful moment around me. There is something. Friends, let's not limit God. Let's not limit God this morning. I don't know how dire the situation may be around you. In April 2016, I was a student then, in my senior year in KU. We were invited for a worship experience in Full Gospel Church, Meru. Yes. You get me. And I can tell you I was not going to look for Kevin. It was purely ministry. We weren't even friends then. We went to Full Gospel Meru. That's the place, Mama. And we got there Saturday afternoon, so we had an afternoon time with the worship team, the church worship team, because they wanted us to do some training, to pray together. So we had a meeting with just the worship team, practiced a few songs, we had an amazing moment, and then Sunday was the D-Day. We were going to have a worship experience, and then an extended time of worship in the afternoon. And that morning, I remember very well, I was wearing a blue shirt and black trousers. I even have photos from that day. And when we were in the service, one of us, because we were just students from KU, one of us in the team, a lady, her name is Lydia Brenda Ogutu. She was asked to minister, to give a short sermonette. And she stood up and she preached on the holiness of God and how on the throne of God, on the holy throne of God, flows power and majesty. It was such a simple sermon. And then she said, at this moment, I would just like to invite the church to just worship with us. And here is what I want us to do. I want us that as we get into this moment of worship, let's behold the Lord. Let's behold the greatness of God. And as we lift up our hands, and some of you as you're shedding tears, let's believe that God is stepping right into your moment. God is stepping right into your need. And He is working out miracles. And it was as simple as that. And we finished, there was no altar call, and we went home. That evening, as we were doing some debrief with the rest of the team and just recollecting the day and prepare for our journey the next morning, a young man came to the place where we were staying. And he said, I'd like to speak to the team leader. And our brother who was in charge went to speak with him. And he said, I came this morning to church. My wife and I got a son just a few weeks ago. But we realized this boy had complications. He could not pass urine. The urethra duct was sort of clogged. And the doctors tried to find a way around it, and they could not find. And so, the only thing they prescribed and advised us is that we cut that boy's organ. And for the rest of his life, he was going to live on pipes. And he was given the weekend to go think through with the wife, make a decision, and then the next morning, on Monday, agree on what they would do. And he said he came to church asking, what did a boy who's barely weeks old do to deserve such? And it was painful for them as parents. And then he says, so even as you guys were preaching, I can tell you my mind was not even there. And when you told us to stand, I just stood and I just cried. And I just cried. He did not even say a word. And he left church, not even knowing what they are going to decide. And then he says he went back to the hospital to check the wife. And when he got there, he found the wife crying. And he was holding the small boy in her hands. And she was crying. And he wondered what just happened. And when she came there, and she noticed that there was a liquid on her arm. And the wife says, just a few moments ago, for the first time, he passed urine. For the first time, he just passed urine, and every one of us here, we don't even know what just happened. The doctors are confused. And he says, I strongly believe it was that moment when I stood and all I did was to just lift up my eyes and to cry to the Lord. And guess what, church? A boy was restored. Why are you limiting God? The same year, 2016 in May, I remember I was invited for a weekend challenge in Kirangari High School. Kirangari is in Kikuyu, Pastor Kimasha's village. We went to Kirangari High School, and I was in the company of a pastor friend of ours. He's called Bishop Ruben Chule. And he was preaching that night. It was a Friday night. I will never forget, the last weekend of May. And we were in this small hall that was so packed up with students, boys, and he was preaching on how Jacob was transformed to Israel. And he was speaking about God's transforming power and how it's able to step into our sin, to step into our moments and completely restore us. And when he finished, that was such a powerful sermon. I almost gave my life to the Lord again. It was so convicting. There was such an awesome power of God in that room. Shy of 9 o'clock in the night, as we were just concluding the service, a small boy, a young man who was in Form 2 then came and said, "Excuse me, I would like to talk to you." So, okay, I said, fine. So we moved aside, and this boy began to cry. He cried so uncontrollably, and I don't know what to do with him. I don't know what to do with a man who's crying. I don't know if... So I just looked at him, and he was not saying anything. I put my hands around him, and I just hugged him. And we stayed there for a moment, and then he spoke. And friends, these are not stories. These are not stories. These are not stories. He said they had just discovered that he was HIV positive. And he was almost being stigmatized from the family, from his friends, and the situation was weighing in on him. And he said that, and he bursted into just tears. I put my hands around him and hugged him. I didn't know what to say, what to do, and I can tell you, that's all we did. And when he soaked up, I asked him, "You know me, man, I don't even know what to do to you. I don't know which prayer to make. I've never been in this situation before, but I just know one thing, that if we have faith, that if you and me both can hold out our hands in this moment, and even if all we are going to do is to just shed tears, God will hear." And I said, "Dennis," his name was Dennis, "do you believe?" And he said, "Yes, I believe. I want to get better. I want to recover from this thing." And he cried, and I just hugged him, and we cried together. Two small boys crying. And we cried together, and then I said, "Fine, you go to class. I believe God in his own time will do this thing." I said, "No, can I have your number?" I gave him my number. 3 months later, on 26th of August, 2016, I had been invited at a place called Kolol Resort in Eldoret. I was going to speak to a group of teenagers from Afsea Church, Eldoret. And we were there, down there in Kolol Resort, kwa mamawe huko chini, and we were speaking with these teens. And then I finished, so I was rushing back because there was another meeting going on in church. Some of us have literally lived in church. And when I just entered the matatu, my phone buzzed, and I checked and saw a message. And this is what it read. "Hi, precious. My name is Dennis. We met 3 months ago. I'm just at the clinic, and the doctor has confirmed me negative." I'm not telling you stories to excite you. Neither am I telling these testimonies to boast. But I can tell you, friends, one thing. For these few years I have walked with the Lord, I have learned never to limit him. I have learned never to limit him. I am the Lord. Is anything too hard for me? Why do you live in unbelief? Why? Why do you refuse to see God for who he is? Church, why? Why would we let our lack of money inform how we relate with God? How can we let earthly things inform our faith? Why? When God looks at you, how worse do you think he finds your situation? And as you think through those words, and as hopeless as the situation may be, friends, God is doing a new thing. God is doing a new thing. I can tell you, I can feel it, He's doing a new thing. He's doing a new thing. Sing about it.